Okay, I'm John Derry. I'm with CGIA, and I want to welcome everyone to this session entitled High Resolution Coastal Land Cover and Partnership Opportunities. Our speaker today for this session is Nate Harold. He's a physical scientist with NOAA's Office for Coastal Management, OCM. He's located in Charleston, South Carolina, where he is responsible for leading NOAA's National Land Cover Monitoring activities through its Coastal Chains Analysis Program, or CCAP. He has a bachelor's in, anyways, he didn't want me to stop there. Anyhow, let's just go ahead, Nate.
All right. Thanks, John. And thank you all for being here and sticking around at the end of the day. I know a virtual meeting can be as tiring or more tiring than attending one in person. So thanks for being here. I'm happy to have the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about the land cover mapping work that we do within NOAA. And give you a little bit of an update in terms of some of the work that we're doing, and most excitingly, some of the work that we're doing within North Carolina. So hopefully many of you are already familiar with CCAP, or at least the 30-meter Landsat-based products that we've been producing for decades. We're primarily focused in the coastal areas, but I always like to use this slide to highlight the history of the program, the products that exist from those Landsat-based image sources and that we update every 5 years, and to highlight the fact that while we are focused within only the coastal portions of the country or the state, we do work very closely with the USGS and all of the other federal agencies that are part of the MRLC consortium and that produce the National Land Cover Database. CCAP products have been directly incorporated into those NLCD data through the years. We work very closely with the USGS to make sure that those are seamless, consistent products. Hopefully, you know that we released a 2016 date of that data earlier last year, and you may or may not be aware that we plan to update that data to a 2019 date and release that later this year. Essentially, the USGS is working through the NLCD products now and over the next month or so, and then we'll be taking some of their final data sets and incorporating that CCAP flare. But NOAA has been spending more and more of our resources towards the production of higher resolution versions of our land cover products. We would like to be able to stand up 1 meter resolution CCAP products everywhere that we map, and maybe beyond the area that we've mapped historically. Now, this isn't really anything that's new for us. We've been producing some high resolution products for a number of years, but those data sets have been primarily in the Pacific and the Caribbean, where Landsat scale imagery really just doesn't cut it for the size of the geographies that we're mapping. And otherwise, they've been very limited in terms of scope, and that's because the data has been very expensive to produce historically. Now, that's been changing in recent years due to the wealth of freely and cheaply available data, things like imagery and more lidar, as well as improved technology, things like distributed and cloud-based processing, more advanced machine learning, and even more advanced deep learning AI classifiers. And that has really brought the costs of those products down significantly, making faster, cheaper, better possible. And I say those terms with a pretty big caveat. When I say faster, I don't mean it's as easy as clicking a button. It really isn't. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, even though the technology that's available now allows us to do more things easier. It's not necessarily cheap, even though it's cheaper than it has been. Certainly not as cheap as producing the Landsat-based data that we have in the past. Though obviously, as you'll see here in a few minutes, it provides a lot more advantages over that data. And while we're certainly doing better and better, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, it takes some work and some effort and some cost to do that. You know, we've found that there's a really big difference between producing a product with impressive technology and producing an impressive product. And you know, what NOAA has been working over the last several years to do is set up a system where we feel like we're leveraging those two ends of the spectrum so that we're producing a very high quality product at increasingly more and more reasonable prices. Our goal right now is to target the production of a 2020 era national product for CCAP, and we want to be able to do that by the year 2025 so that we can start operationally updating those products. And then we would like to do that into the future on a 4 to 6 year repeat cycle at a minimum. So what we're talking about is moving away from data produced at a scale like this, our standard 30-meter products. This is actually an example in Connecticut, to data that can be used at the more local level and could even support parcel-based analysis, something like this 1-meter product that we produced for the state as well. This is data that could be used to better support hydrodynamic modeling, flood risk assessment, stormwater management, and urban forestry. The tree capture in urban areas, as you can see in this extreme example here, where I'm zoomed in way further into that Landsat-based 30-meter product than anyone should ever intend to be used for. It just doesn't have the same level of detail as what you can see in the 1-meter products that we're producing. And here's another example, this one not in Connecticut. This is King County in Washington State in the Seattle area. We're working with folks at the state level and at the county levels who would be interested in these products to try to build out the data sets that we are developing. In addition to some of the CCAP level products that we're offering, we have a few unique buy-up options that we're able to offer. Things like this product that you can see here from one of our contract companies called Ucopia. This is a product that goes into even more detail in terms of the amount of impervious related categories that they map. They are mapping 6 categories on a national scale as part of a standard product and can map about a dozen that you can see here as custom products. And these products can even be used to support more applications beyond what the high resolution CCAP data sets could support. So you could see or think about the fact that having access to information like where driveways are located could be useful for 911 response purposes, or knowing where sidewalks and crosswalks are could be used in walkability studies. And this is just one example of some of the types of data that we can produce even beyond what CCAP typically does at an added cost. We're talking about data that could be used for more detailed green infrastructure analysis, living shorelines, better conservation and restoration site planning, improved habitat assessment, and carbon accounting. This is a salt marsh area, comparing our 30-meter products to a statewide 1-meter product that we produced for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Massachusetts was our first state-level partner who bought into this and helped us fund the development of these products. And really what I like to point out here is that you can see the level of detail that exists in that 1-meter data set within those tidal creek networks, as well as the pans and pools that farm on that marsh surface. And this is just not detail that 30-meter imagery can allow you to see. Here's just another example. This is from the southern Maine, the Kennebunkport area, where NOAA has its Wells National Estuarine Research Reserve. And I provide this just as another example of that level of detail that we can provide. And one last example, and NOAA is really hopeful that by moving to this higher resolution of product, that we can both support some of the applications I've already mentioned, that folks are looking for data like this to be able to use at the local level, but also tie in better with state and federal data sets that are not land cover related explicitly. DOTs might very well be interested in some of the impervious information that we could produce, or road center lines in areas of change. Canopy and agricultural mapping would be probably much better informed. And we've been having a lot of conversations with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and determining whether some of these high resolution CCAP products and the wetlands that we map could be used much more directly to inform things like updates to the National Wetland Inventory. Now, similar to the biop option I highlighted for impervious, NOAA also offers some ability to buy up within the mapping that we do in coastal wetlands. So in this example, in New Hampshire, we created a salt marsh habitat data set. And this is a product where we used the 30-centimeter imagery. It was a low tide image data set. And what we did was essentially break the marsh categories that we map within CCAP out into about a dozen different categories, explicitly mapping whether some of the unconsolidated areas were pans or pools were there, differentiating high marsh from low marsh, and mapping a number of different species, including invasives. We've done this both in New Hampshire and Rhode Island. So just to give you kind of an idea of where we're working nationally, and then I'll hit a little bit on the fact that we're working locally as well. You can see a few areas in darker green where we have some existing data. This is the data sets that we've started to churn out now that we've worked the kinks out over the last couple of years. So Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, which I've already mentioned. Got a couple of counties scattered throughout the rest of the country and the state of Delaware. Then you can see some areas highlighted in green and yellow. These are areas where we either have work that is currently active, like down in New Orleans, or in the New Hanover and Brunswick County area that I have highlighted in North Carolina. That's a data set that we are hoping to release in the early summer timeframe of this year. So hopefully folks will eagerly be anticipating that. And then some of the other areas that are highlighted in yellow where we're just starting some of that work or started it previously and need to make room in our production queue to get back to it. And again, our real hope here is that we can use these as proof of concepts or demonstrations to folks to get them interested in the product, to explain to them what it could be used for, to highlight what it looks like in their areas, and see if there's arrangements that we could work out where we can both contribute to the production of these kinds of data sets, get them stood up so that NOAA could maintain them in the future. And I'll just go ahead and close with one last slide that kind of just summarizes those three offerings. The high resolution data that I mentioned, the more detailed impervious mapping, and the more detailed marsh habitat mapping that I mentioned. And I actually lied, I've got one final slide. This is a slide that I'm hoping will play. It's a video, it's about a minute long, and it introduces our Land Cover Atlas. This is an online tool that we developed to help folks make use of some of the change information that CCAP produces. Most of it's our 30-meter products, though if you get in there and look through some of it, you will see the change information in Hawaii and down in the Caribbean is based on our higher resolution data sets. So hopefully this will play and there won't be just a minute of awkward silence. And with that, I thank you for the time to give you a little bit of an update on what it is that we're doing. And I guess we'll take some questions.
Nate, we have a question of, have you been able to capture ditching as a distinct class?
No. So CCAP has a pretty set categorization or class scheme. We map about 18 different categories at the 1 meter scale and about 25 at the 30-meter resolution. They're mostly the same, except for how there's a few differences in terms of scale. We haven't really started introducing more detailed categories. That could be something that could be done in a similar way to the mapping that we do for salt marsh habitat, say, where it'd be kind of a more custom product, a buy-up option.
Okay. Wait a minute or so for if anyone wants to ask some more questions. Well, you guys are doing some great stuff. Like to see, at some point what's happening in the Brunswick, New Hanover counties. And so,
yeah, like I said, we're hoping to have those data sets released early summer, late May, or maybe at the very beginning of June. Those will be our standard 1 meter products, so they'll incorporate about 18 different categories of land cover, consistent with the standard CCAP scheme, and that could be rolled up to the NLCD scheme as well.
Okay. And Jeff Brown asked, what data sets are you using in New Hanover and Brunswick counties?
Yeah, so we have been utilizing a lot of the NAPE imagery and the lidar data that exists there. We make use of a lot of ancillary information as well. But I was talking to John right before the call, and I had sat in on Ben's presentation about the ortho imagery program, and really want to get access to the leaf off imagery that you guys have for the coastal area within those 2 counties. We are starting to move into the phase in our production where we would be looking to starting the wetlands mapping portion of our work. And that leaf off imagery is very useful to us in mapping the forested wetlands in particular.
Just wait a minute here and see if there's any more.
Yeah, and maybe I'll fill in the silence by saying, we didn't get into too much in terms of the details and in terms of our methodologies, but we make a lot of use of object-based classification, geobia, ecognition processing with image segments. We've utilized a lot of machine learning in the past, but have really started to transition more into deep learning and neural net classification. The impervious that I kind of highlighted, that company has done the impervious for these 2 counties, so that should be a very good product. And as we have been able to develop more and more of these products in other parts of the country, we're able to feed those finished products into our neural net training, and then bring it to areas like North Carolina, tweak that training slightly, and then get better products in quicker times because of that. And that's particularly paid off in some of our open space developed mapping, as well as some of our agricultural categories, the more land use related classes.
That's interesting stuff. All right, well, I think that's it for the questions. And I want to thank you. And we have one more session today. Then we go into our virtual social. So anyhow, hope to see you there.